Day Africa, and welcome to another episode of our Agenda 2063, where we put the spotlight on African Union's Agenda 2063 document. Again, remember, the Agenda 2063 document is a strategic framework for the socio-economic transformation of the continent in the next 50 years. That being said, the people behind this agenda are the youth. And today on Agenda 2063, we'll be listening to the voices of the youth. So with me here in the studios, I have incredible guests who are all student activists. And so I'll be engaging them on a series of conversation regarding how the youth can help achieve the Agenda 2063. And so also remember, our united voices paints a picture of what we desire for ourselves as a continent. And so you can also join the conversation we'll be having here in the studio by following our social media handles on Twitter, AAU_67. You can also follow us on Facebook, Association of African Universities, and also on YouTube. You can catch us live. Drop your comments, suggestions, and then you'll be part of our discussions. We will go for a quick break, and when we're back, I will introduce my guest for today. Stay with us.
Solar energy is unlimited. When used efficiently, it can be a sustainable daily energy source for us. With the use of innovative technologies, a PolyU research team has recently developed highly efficient solar cells, which can help advance the efficiency of sustainable energy.
Perovskite solar cell is the latest generation of solar cells. They're currently under vigorous research for sustainable power generation. It has outstanding photovoltaic properties, including a broad absorption range in the visible light spectrum, strong light absorption power, and good electrical properties. When it first appeared in 2009, the cell efficiency was low at about 3.8%. That's why our research team wants to find ways for improvement. Recently, we have successfully developed a perovskite silicon tandem solar cell with a record power conversion efficiency of 25.5%.
The PolyU team enhanced the efficiency of the solar cell in 3 innovative ways. First, the team optimizes the perovskite materials utilizing oxygen for passivation of defects in perovskite materials to improve the conversion efficiency of the cells. Secondly, with regard to perovskite's absorption of short wavelength photons and the characteristics of silicon-absorbing long-band photons, the team boosted the transparency of the electrodes in the long band so that more light energy could enter the silicon cell under the perovskite cell.
Welcome back. This is Agenda 2063. On today's show, we are looking at the Agenda 2063 and the voice of the youth. And so today, representing the voice of the youth, I have with me Eric Nana Agyemang. Eric Nana Agyemang is a co-NUX Press and Information Secretary. NUX stands for National Union of Ghana Students. And also I have Abekah Emmanuel, also a former SRC President for University of Ghana, Accra City Campus. They are all youth activists, and they are here with me in the studio. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so not that I confuse my viewers. You are Abekah, right?
Sure.
And so you are Eric. So I'll refer to you as Eric, and then I'll refer to you as Emmanuel. So Emmanuel, Eric. You're welcome to AAU TV.
Thank you very much.
How's the traffic situation in Accra?
Terrible, terrible, as always. But I think we've become used to it, so we can't complain much.
Really?
Yeah,
do you get used to traffic?
Oh yes, we have.
Or maybe you expect it to improve, something like that.
Of course, of course.
Abekah, where are you coming from?
I came from Hachu.
Hachu?
Sure.
Okay, then that means you didn't meet any heavy traffic on the way?
Not much. By this time, traffic is very low. Maybe when the workers have closed, that is where we will be seeing the jamming.
Okay, then so I will make sure I do not keep you here till workers close. Okay, welcome again. This is Agenda 2063. we look at African Union's Agenda 2063 document, which is a strategic framework for the socio-economic transformation of the African continent. And if you look at the document, we are looking at 50 years ahead. And 50 years ahead, you know that there is not something for the elderly, it's for us, the youth. And so that is why it's always important that we create a dialogue around this document and how we can achieve the aspirations in the document. And so it's very necessary that we involve the youth. And today, you are representing the voice of the youth in Africa. So whatever you say today is documented as the voice of the youth. Okay. All right, so let's go straight to our discussions. So we are looking at the aspirations of the Agenda 2063 and then what you have to say on the aspirations. So the first aspiration is a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. As a youth, how do we achieve sustainable development? How do we reduce poverty? How do we reduce inequality? How do we attain a high standard of living in Africa? I'll start from you, Emmanuel.
All right. Thank you very much. And let me say a warm good afternoon to all African youth out there. It's a privilege, and I must say that I always get excited whenever I have the platform to speak on behalf of African youth. Let me first of all acknowledge the uniqueness of the Agenda 2063. I have personally gone through a couple of times and I've seen that it is a document that it deserves the attention of the youth. Talking about sustainable development, a prosperous Africa, we all can attest to the fact that Africa has a lot to do, and looking at the prosperity aspect, it is one that is very dear to my heart.
Okay.
Because whenever we mention Africa, the word that always comes to our mind, or it radiates a sense of poverty. Everything that has the "lu" with it prefix will be acknowledged as being African. And so that part is very critical. I believe that as youth, we are all interested, and today if we are making decisions as young people and young leaders, one thing that we don't forget is prosperity and how our continent will grow.
Okay.
But personally, I believe that all these can be achieved, or we can be prosperous, if we lay down a very concrete and an educational system that can on its own help people to realize who they are. It seemed to me that when we are talking about development, everything can be reduced to education. That is how I see it. We are talking about an Africa that is prosperous. First of all, how can you even desire prosperity if you are not even aware the benefit that it brings and the status that it can put you to? And so I will talk about education. I know it along the line it will be part of the aspiration itself. But all the aspirations outlined,
it's even in the aspiration.
Yes, all the aspirations outlined would definitely be built on a concrete educational foundation. If the African youth is given the education that he needs, you don't need to remind him that we need a prosperous continent. The continent will be prosperous. And so I will just put everything, or the point blank, on education when we talk about sustainable development.
So prosperous Africa, education is key.
Education is key.
Emphasis should be placed on education.
Yes, education should be the fulcrum on which we can build a prosperous Africa.
I saw you taking notes, so I know Africa, we are in good hands. So what do you have to say on
good hands? Well, as we journey along, I'm sure we interrogate that further. But of course, let me say good afternoon to your cherished viewers across the African continent. Bonsoir, telespectateur. And on your question, prosperous Africa and Agenda 2063 being introduced to, fast track, how prosperous we become as a continent. And for me, my fear is this is actually not the first time we are introducing a developmental strategy on our continent. After the independence of African countries somewhere late 1950s and the 1960s, the times of the Kwame Nkrumahs, the Nnamdi Azikwe's, the Jomo Kenyatta's and the rest, you'd realize we had implemented not less than 10 developmental strategies.
Okay.
You talk about the import substitution industrialization.
Okay.
You talk about the structural adjustment program.
Okay.
You talk about political conditionalities. You talk about NEPA. You talk about integration, where the regional blocks were introduced, AU, ECOWAS, and all that. And so you ask yourself, after all these, and even HEPIC, which was subscribed to by Ghana, Rwanda, and Sierra Leone, and other African countries. So this is not the first time you are hearing of a developmental strategy being introduced to fast-track development and, to be more specific, prosperity on our continent. Okay. And in your intro, you said something interesting, that we are looking at the next 50 years. Yeah. And you ask yourself, yes, it is certainly not for the elderly. Yeah. It is for we, the youth, coming up. And you ask yourself, were even the youth consulted in the drafting of this document? Okay. Because it is for us. It is not for, you know, those in topmost echelon of leadership, the president who sits at AU meeting. I mean, in the next 15, 20 years, I'm sure most of them, if not all of them, will be gone. And the destiny of Africa, you know, hangs on our necks. Yeah. So I think as we journey along, we get to interrogate further. And I think I would agree with my brother that, of course, if you are talking about prosperity, we certainly cannot do without education. Yeah. I think that's the central conversion point. We can talk about IT, but that in itself is education. And employment. But of course, if you get to educate someone, he or she, you know, gets to even be self-dependent and create more jobs. So I think the common ground we can find at this stage is education is the way to go. Okay.
So you put my mind to something. You mentioned that we've had a lot of developmental strategies and documents, and so it makes me think. These aspirations, I'm pulling you back. 7 aspirations. Would you say it's overly ambitious, or we are being overly ambitious, looking at the aspirations that we've outlined? Okay, let me...
Okay, talking about we being overly ambitious is one that personally I will agree and disagree at the same time.
On which grounds?
Yes, I will agree merely on the grounds that if you look at all the aspirations, just like my co-panelist said earlier, they are not new to us. Okay. And we are looking at 50 years ahead. Okay. It is visionary, yes. But to what extent are we making sure that even the old ones that we drafted, we stick to them? Okay. But to me, that is even another terrain of discussion, whether we are going to look at the factors that hinder the progress of African countries. That is where probably we will get an opportunity to talk more about that. But they are not new, I agree. But I disagree on the other side too, because it is not wrong. For me, we being conscious of the fact that we even need a developmental strategy is one that is commendable to me. Okay. If finally, for years, we have been talking about the youth, and the only place we appear is political rallies and campaigns where we have been told that we are being placed at the center of our development. The youth is the driving force. We have all sorts of sugar-coated phrases that we used to describe the African youth. But the youth is aware that it is not part of the decision-making process. As I was coming, my co-panelists were talking to me about the youth and stuff. I was looking around, and who is selling coconut? Is the African youth. Who is selling yogurt? Is the African youth. Who is doing that? Every menial job you find, we are the people doing it. And these are the people that have been put in the documents. Okay. And the people on the street, who is aware of Agenda 2063? So we, first of all, recognizing the fact that there is a need to bring the African youth into a developmental strategy, to me is a step in the right direction. Okay. So we are not overly ambitious in that regard.
So creating a dialogue around the Agenda 2063, in this case involving the youth, maybe brings a sense of, you know, ownership
of
the document. And so that is probably one of the main reasons why I'm kind of happy having you two gentlemen here in the house. So to you, Eric, what's your view? Is the document overly ambitious?
I think I would agree with my co-panelist, not in entirety though. I think the bit I would agree with him is the fact that it's a good thing that we need to initiate a dialogue on that. But for how long? We've been talking about this since Adam.
Okay.
Just like I have enumerated the developmental strategies, it's this basically the same thing.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed. Basically the same thing. Prosperous Africa, more inclusive, and all of that.
Yeah.
It's been the same thing, and we certainly cannot do the same old things, the same old way, and expect a different result. But yes, we will initiate national and continental dialogue on that. But to what end? Okay. If you are not achieving the results, talk we say is cheap.
Yeah.
We need to see, things on the ground.
So practically, how do we achieve the aspirations outlined? So let me go over the aspirations again. The first aspiration says that a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. The second one says that an integrated continent, politically united and based on the ideals of Pan-Africanism and the vision of Africa's Renaissance. The third aspiration, an Africa of good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice and the rule of law. The fourth aspiration, a peaceful and secure Africa. Yes, note that. The fifth aspiration, it says, an Africa with a strong cultural identity, common heritage, values and ethics. Yeah, values and ethics. The sixth aspiration says that an Africa where development is people-driven, unleashing the potential of its women and youth. And then Africa as a strong, united and influential global player. Okay, so now let's narrow our discussions to 2 points that are very critical to me. And when it comes to the youth, I'm sure there's something that we want to create a dialogue around and then suggest concrete solutions. So the first one I will pick is a peaceful and secure Africa. We all know what the lack of peace can cause. As the youth, what do you think we can do to gain a peaceful and secure Africa? An Africa where there will be no guns. All guns will be silent. How do we achieve this? Let me start from you, Eric.
A peaceful Africa. I remember what David Weeks said about peace. Okay. That a world without diversity is a world without peace.
Okay.
So that should be established that once there's diversity, once I'm coming from Ghana, you are coming from Nigeria, I would say Ghana is the best, you say Nigerian is the best, and even within our countries, I think that is basic to peace. But talking about the peace we know we are talking about here, the use of guns and all that, I think there's a long history we are fully not accounted for here in Africa. Okay. We are perhaps the continent with coup d'etats and all that. And in the last 3, 4, 5 years, can you imagine we've had 2 countries with 2 presidents?
Okay.
Talk about Kenya. Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. How can we have a country in Africa with 2 presidents? I think our leaders are power drunk, and that is the main cause of the wars we get plunged into. Not just Kenya. Talk about Gambia. Okay. Adama Barrow and Yahya Jammeh. Similar case. Okay. So when we talk about peace in Africa, you would clearly agree that it has to do with politics.
And power struggle.
Yes, power struggle.
Yeah. Politicians
always want to perpetuate their stay. Okay. And I remember a story being told, recounted by the former UN General Secretary, Kofi Annan, may he so rest in peace, that at the UN, after one day after a session, and he got closer to some of the African leaders, you know what they were discussing? That, oh, I've stayed in power for 22 years. Okay. Oh, no, you have stayed longer. I've stayed 25 years. They were not ashamed of it. They were wearing them as badges of honor.
Yeah.
that yes, they have stayed longer and they actually want to continue to be in power. Remember what happened to Mugabe? So I think we've had a very dark history as far as peace on our continent is concerned. And if there's any area we should be looking at it, I think it should be politics. Power struggle, because that has been the main thing. You can talk about tribe conflict and all that, but how many? How many do? Yes. Yeah. How many do we even see compared to the ones that get recorded relative to power struggle?
Okay, so let me push you further. What will be your recommendation towards, doing away with all this power struggle, in a way that we will recognize that politics is not for one person, and so maybe we will demystify all those, maybe whatever is around that is causing people to stay in power for longer. Do you have any concrete solutions?
I think we should be patriotic. Okay. We should put our countries first. Okay. Because if we put our countries first, then we know that it is the same problem that we are competing to solve. Okay. And it is not about the personalities. And here in Ghana, as in MPP, NDC, it is never about MPP, NDC. It is about the country. Okay. So I think that if we're able to put our countries first, that will be, a great step towards,
Okay. So Eric is calling for patriotism as a way of dealing with the peace situation in Africa. What would you say, Emmanuel?
Well, the issue of the peaceful and secured Africa is annotated. That is our aspiration. That by 2063, 50 years from now, we should have an Africa that is peaceful. Once again, like Eric earlier said, what haven't we had before? A peaceful and secured Africa. But this one, obviously, there is no point to be so much stress here outside politics. The line, the bottom line here is politics, because we are having a problem, and the challenge here is not coming from any quarters than the political or centers of powers. That is where the problem is. Now, if the youth are brought in, we are brought in to come and fuel the conflict. Yes, we have been hired, we are being rent, because come to think of it, these are the same people who have the opportunities. They have the scholarships. They have all the good things that the African youth desire. And so when they also demand for something from you, obviously your hands are tied. You have to go about it. And so you have the African youth sympathizing with various political parties. It's not wrong. But that is why the aspiration is placing emphasis on human-driven and sustainable. A development that will help present generation and will also be beneficial to the future generations. And so we come back to politics, but it is not easy, and we will not ignore the fact that when we are talking about politics, you cannot just be sitting here and be saying they are power-driven, they are power-drunk, they want to perpetuate power. Some of these things that they do are within the Constitution. And remember, the aspiration is also calling for democracy, rule of law. But these concepts are too, should I say, open. They are open-worded and, should I say, multi-tested. Who defines the standards for who to follow? We are one people, yes, one continent. We have one vision. We have one aspiration. But when we go home, different approaches. And so we may sit here in Ghana and also try to do this and that, call ourselves the most peaceful country. Excuse me to say, our brothers and sisters somewhere may not see it the same way. And when you say we should be peaceful, what exactly are you saying? A hungry man cannot be peaceful. An unemployed youth cannot be peaceful. And so you go back to your root. You solve the basic challenges. You are dealing with an effect and you are ignoring the causes. So what is making us insecure? What is making here not be peaceful? It's the same basic things which the aspirations are seeking to address.
Poverty, of course, inequality.
Of course. These are the drivers of the peace you are talking about. And so if they have not been catered for, I wonder what we are looking for. And the same people that we are attacking are the very people who drafted this document for you. Whether the youth are involved or they are not involved. I'm not looking at that part.
Okay.
But our heads of state who meet and sign the AU Charter are the same people who go back to their homes and they need to be counseled from the Western institutions before they step down. So what are we talking about?
Okay. So, Eric, interesting here. So, right now, you are the voices of the youth. What will be your call to the youth of Africa when it comes to ensuring peace and security in Africa? What is your call to the youth?
I think pretty much Ima touched on a bit of that. Even though we can call on the youth, but if the politicians are not doing what they are supposed to do, providing jobs for the jobless, homes or the homeless, then certainly you can call on them morning, afternoon, evening. Yeah. If they don't have the jobs, certainly they would outburst and get into something messy. But I think education again,
okay,
it takes center stage of, you know, this call that we're looking at. If the youth are properly educated, I'm not sure they will, you know, as my lecturer will put it, become fanatic supporters of regimes.
Yeah. And even when it comes to ethnic conflicts,
yes,
our diversity will become a source of strength. A source
of strength, and not, you know, to divide us. Yeah. So I think education should be pushed to, you know, get the youth enlightened, because we are university students and none. I'm not sure. Even though we have our weaknesses. Sure. Yes, when it gets partisan and political, you know, the divisions will come. But at least we have some basic things we would observe. We wouldn't get as messy as, you know, someone uneducated would be. So I think we should continue to push education in the minds of the youth to get them enlightened. That our diversity, being MPP, NDC, being a Fanti, being a GA, should, as you said, be a source of our strength and not our division.
Okay, thank you very much. Ima, the youth of Africa, they are listening to you. What will be your call to them towards achieving peace and security in Africa?
Wow. My call is very simple. We will have to detach ourselves from political parties.
Okay.
That is not to say that we cannot or we should not be sympathizers or members of political parties. Okay. But let's pull our conscience and emotions from these groups. We are not sitting here to tag political parties as people who are not peaceful or an organization that is only seeking to perpetuate its interest. Okay. But you would agree with me that the political parties supply the country's leadership. They train and groom people. Okay. So then again, the conversation will have to go back to the root. Okay. What is it that they tell their people when they are grooming them? Okay. If it is people-centered and we have all been enrolled into it, we have no problem. Okay. Because, let me take Ghana for instance, because that is where I can hammer it better. If you look at the country's major political appointment, it is party filled. There is no doubt, whether in theory or in practice, it is party filled. Winner takes all. The professors have been talking about it, civil organizations have been hammering on it. But whether you like it or yes, once you win power, you have the right to appoint right from the ministerial to the district levels. And so you have the people who are calling themselves public and civil servants, not really neutral in any case. Okay. We are all serving the interests of the party. So if the interest of the party is people-driven, then what is our problem as a country? The youth, we can all be fighting for this and that, because at the end of the day, it is development we are talking about. Just that the approaches are different. Okay. But if we are having a different case, then there is a problem. We need to revisit. What is wrong? What is it that the party people tell their members? What goes on there? Because they will supply. Once they capture power, we will be sitting here and discussing at that 2063. But the politicians sat down to rotate. So if they are human enough, and they have the people at heart, then everything they write obviously is going to benefit everyone. But if we allow people to meet, discuss what they want to do with the country's resources, and we sit here and allow our destinies in the hands of people who have no idea what they even want for themselves and where they want the continent to be, then we will keep talking. And we will draw development initiatives for 1,005, 2,000 years, we will still be at the same place.
Okay.
And so I will advise the African youth once again, detach yourself from the political parties.
Okay.
Not that they have nothing good to offer, but then we should be able to think on our own. If we have good education enough, you wouldn't have to recommend a party that I should join. Because whether you like it or yes, a party will take over the political leadership.
Okay, so discerning youth. We will take a quick break because the arguments and the discussion is getting heated. So we will go for a short break, and when we are back, we will continue with our discussions here in the studio of AAU. Stay with us.
Are you an institution or individual? Do you intend to organize a memorable event to be archived for future reference? Then look no further than AAU Studios, because it's your best bet. With our spacious studio and state-of-the-art media equipment such as 4K Panasonic video cameras, KinoFlow lights, assorted microphones, live streaming machines and others, you are sure to get the best of production. Visit us at Trinity Avenue, East Legon, adjacent the National Accreditation Board, or contact the AAU studio via the following addresses: info@aau.org, AAU TV @aau.org, ransford@aau.org. Alternatively, you can call us on 0244 185 998 or 0244 693 342.
Welcome. This is Agenda 2063. Today we are having a discussion on the agenda and the aspirations and the voices of the youth here in Africa. Gentlemen, we are jumping straight to the set aspiration. It says that an Africa where development is people-driven, unleashing the potential of its women and youth. So I see that we've been talking about how the youth were not involved in the drafting of this document. Well, we cannot speak to the facts of that, but in one way or the other, we find ourselves in the agenda, so and aspirations. And so an Africa where development is people-driven, you and I, unleashing the potential of its women and youth. Do you think that we are living to this aspiration? Are we giving the youth the opportunities? Are we giving our women the necessary opportunities to compete in this global continent? I'll start from you.
Certainly not. We are not giving the youth and the women opportunities to compete globally. As a student of gender and politics, on any day, I would support any attempt or action to, advance the cause of SDG 5. On any day, I would do that. But it's a sad reality. We are not experiencing it here on our continent. You look around, all around in Africa, and how many youthful presidents can you count? Recently, France elected Emmanuel Macron, and we were here hailing, oh, they've done well. But look at our constitutions. The huge barriers we have erected in them, that even if you are good enough and you will not, at a certain age, you can't contest. And you look at it, we've been electing, older folks, and have they really changed our economies? So don't you think it's time we actually flip that around and get more of the youth into the system? I know for political appointments, deputy ministerial, we are trying. So let it not be said that we are not, nothing is being done about it. We are trying, but I think at higher levels, we've not achieved that. And for women, like I said, on any day I support women, but I think sometimes their actions betrays the support that we want to lend them. Here in Ghana, we've seen, quite a number of women we have appointed into power. Some went haywire that they want to make 1 million Ghana cedis and want to get out of politics. And some with, sharp teeth, insulting here and there. So I think even the few women we have given opportunities, they've not lived up to the expectation.
That is your personal observation. My
personal observation. And I'm looking at the political arena. I know in other areas like telecommunication, IT, the likes of Lucy Quest, the Nana Namoas, the Anita Eskins are doing excellently well. But as I belong to the school of thought that everything rises and falls on leadership.
Okay.
And so if we don't have women in leadership, then do you expect a man to even push an agenda of a woman? So it's only when we have women in power who be able to also push. And recently we having a whole lot of, gender political groups springing up, trying to empower women here and there, the Pepper Dams, many others. So I think that let's look at it from the political perspective. If you're able to get more women in the political space, women contest for president, not just here in Ghana, but what becomes of the results? Yeah. Terrible. So I think let's give women more opportunity, and the youth as well, and be able to, come out with an all-encompassing development for our continent.
Okay, let me get to you, Ima. Ima, on the issue of youth in leadership, that is what we're calling for. That is what Eric mentioned. But then we have a situation whereby the youth, instead of propagating their own agenda, they have become political stooges, excuse me to say, and they are following the orders of the political leaders. Is that a right path that we are charting for ourselves?
Well, obviously we are charting the wrong path. Okay. And I think I have said this earlier, that there is a huge problem, and the problem is cannot be blamed on the youth. The youth is just being smart, because he has to survive. Okay. Everything that will make the youthful life fulfilling and meaningful is in the pocket of the politician. And so the youth is not wrong, or the African youth is not wrong, when he solely pushes the agenda of the party. But there again, what do you blame? Is the education. And this is, I'll keep mentioning it, it's the same problem that this aspiration is seeking to address. Now, the sixth aspiration is talking about development that is people-driven and relies on African people. And we cannot attest to the fact. It's all around. The most recent government, I'm referring to the Ghanaian government, has consulted a Singapore civil engineer to redesign or redevelop, if I should put it that way, Accra for us. I will not say it's a wrong decision, but that is what we are talking about. So we are telling ourselves that the whole of the Ghanaian population, or among Ghanaians, and even in West Africa, before you even move to Africa, in West Africa, we have no civil engineer that can look at Accra and redesign or redevelop Accra. So we have a problem. And these are the people who met to agree to this. I hope you understand what I'm saying. These are the people who met. So it's like when we meet and discuss the issue, when we go back home, there is a different agenda altogether. That is why we need to question, we need to interrogate the source of that inspiration. So where is it coming from? It is coming from the leadership. So what inspires you to consult people? We are not saying in this globalized world, don't consult any engineer outside your remit or your geographical location. That's not what we are saying. But we are seeking for a self-identity. We are creating a sense of pride for ourselves. Development that relies on our own potential. But our potentials are ignored. And we cannot attest to the fact that we have great minds on our continent. But they are nowhere close to the development of the continent. In fact, they travel outside to go and make their exploit. We cannot talk about Kantanka here and his innovatives. As at now, we are yet to see what is being done. You will start today, and I'm sure there will be a different conversation. And Mr. President is supporting the man because his daughter is a minister of procurement, whatever. The argument will change, the conversation will change. And so probably the government doesn't want to get involved. But that is just one example. What we are seeing is a development that is centered on the people. So do you have the people in mind? If you have the people in mind, then definitely every decision you take will be about the people. So if you know you have an engineer among you, then instead of paying a foreigner or whatever benefit that contract will come with, goes to your own people. Unless, of course, they don't have what it takes. But if they have the qualification and they can do it, and you don't consult them, then we have a problem. That is what exactly the aspiration is seeking. So African countries continuously dwell on the potential of other continents. They ignore their own. And so we don't have to run away from the fact. But each time they want to make a decision, some of these documents are there to guide them. So what happens? Why is it that whenever we make a decision, when we want a coach, when we are talking of development, it's too broad that we cannot only be limited to politics. When we are looking for a coach, we'll go outside. And recently we heard a Ghanaian has piloted the biggest plane, but our airline is a restaurant. It's a restaurant. We have a pilot that is doing excessively well, but your airline is a restaurant. And it is all over the social media, and we are hailing ourselves. So this is who we have become. But let's buy an airline today, and we will call a white man to come and drive. We don't hate white people. But the development is not based on the potential of the African people. Either they lack a sense of pride, or there is a case of inferiority complex. We don't even believe that what the African is doing is up to standard. And that is what we are talking about here. If we could all be confident in ourselves that Africa can solely be developed by Africans, that is what we are inciting the Pan-Africanist spirit. So we move together. We think about ourselves. How can we solve this the African way? Can we drop this argument and look at it from this perspective? Once we are doing that, we are moving together. But all we could sit down is that when we give it to an African, he will go and bring overblown budget here and there. Then definitely,
which is true though.
There is
which is true.
There is another case.
I think there are lots of issues to be talked about when it comes to the agenda, and most definitely we will have time. And then this same set, because I know that there are a lot of things that we want to talk about. But then, as my producer will be saying, we say that, okay, Schenineda, you need to cut it. But so before we go, or before I even heed to the advice of my producer, I'll give you the last opportunity to make a call, a strong call to Africans, especially the youth, on what we should do. I'll start from you, Eric.
A call. And maybe just to say something later on, what Ima finished on. I would want to call on our government and, political actors first before I call on the youth. And that is to, in all good faith, ask them to stop handing out sweetheart deals to the West. Just as we are talking, we have people here whose capacities are well built to, construct the roads and whatever we want to do, to drive our planes and all that. But here we are giving it to outsiders, especially the Chinese, as they are on agenda to conquer Africa. If I have any call to make on the youth, I think Ima has said it, for us to, delink our emotions from the whims and caprices of political parties, because the politician would always take advantage of anything to boost his or her political fortunes. So that is key, and I think we should also take our education serious, because with that, if we're able to go through, our minds will be enlightened for us to, get things, the very problems that we are talking about. I think it's a very difficult situation that the youth find him or herself. Because, yes, the problems exist. In drafting documents to solve the problem, we are not consulted. And in the end, our hands are tied. You must say the opportunities are in the pockets of the politician, and we have to run to them. So I think, yes, we need to call on the youth, but a lot more should be directed to the politician.
Ima?
Thank you very much. I will use this opportunity to call on African youth not to give up on themselves. I think we are having a very serious challenge here, but all that I want to say is that we should keep on learning. Our elders have a proverb that when you learn to walk like your father, definitely you are going to walk like him. And so let's pick the good things that they are doing, but the bad ones that we have observed that these things are not helping our continent, let's stop them.
And desist from them.
Exactly. Let's learn the good ones, drop the bad ones, and build it build a development that is people-centered. Let's not be too much self-seeking. All that we want is that our families and ourselves. Leadership is not about a person. No, it's about the people. If it is for them, then whatever you do, you will not be missing your adjectives here and there. Always is the people. And your decisions, your actions should be for them. It's not merely giving speeches and reassuring the African youth that we are helping you. I'll make sure that your potential, but we are seeing the potentials are not being unleashed anywhere. It's still within them. And we are doing things that are not important.
Thank you, gentlemen. It has been a brilliant call to African youth, and then interesting having you here on the studio of African University Association of African Universities. As I mentioned, we hope to find you again talking about the issue Eric wanted to raise about Chinese colonizing Africa.
Very important.
We will come to that. So most obviously, we will be glad to have you here in the house again. Once again, thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
If you are in the house and watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, or on Twitter, remember, you can also represent the voice of the youth. You can send us a message through our social media handles, and the next moment, you will be here representing the voices of the youth. Follow us on Twitter, AAU_67. On Facebook, search for Association of African Universities. On YouTube, search for Association of African Universities. It's interesting having you with us. This is Agenda 2063, and I was your host, Schenineda Ankomah. Thank you very much.